Okay, we've got the gas tank off, got the plastic out, plastic off, the battery's out. The battery doesn't have to be out, but I'm servicing the battery. So the next thing I'm going to do is pull spark plugs out, since when you adjust the valves, it's usually at the 6,000 mile maintenance when you should be replacing the spark plugs anyway. You must remove at least one spark plug in order to turn the motor over so you can get it to the right place to adjust the valves. Okay, having stripped the bike down some, we're going to take the valve cover off. You can just loosen these a little bit, and then you can take them off with a open end wrench or box wrench, or sometimes your fingers. See, once you get them loose, you can do it by hand. There's 6 bolts. Okay, so now I've got all 6 bolts loose. I'm going to pull the valve cover off. This is kind of tricky. Get these hoses in the way. Sometimes it helps to get the bolts in the back out so that you can get the valve cover out of your way. Now, some people remove the valve cover completely. I just kind of let it hang out of the way. Okay.
Okay, now I'm...
Okay. So this is a 22 millimeter wrench. Goes right on here, and all you got to do is knock it loose. And this is the chain tensioner. So what we're going to do is remove the chain tensioner, the bolt that holds the chain tensioner, and then kind of push on that with your finger, or you can pull on the cam chain and it pops out, and there is the actual chain tensioner. The flat side goes in, and there's a piece of plastic in there that this thing pushes up against the chain, but you can see how the cam chain now has some slop in it. Okay, so this bolt is the cover bolt for where the crank stop bolt goes. So we've got to get this thing out. Now this motor's full of oil, but since there's very little oil in the sump, really nothing comes out. Okay, now this is on a Classic, the bolt that holds the back of the gas tank, and you can see how I ground the tip to be kind of rounded. Let me get the other bolt. So you can see how the end of this bolt is no longer flat, it's slightly rounded. It shouldn't come to a full point, but it's got to be rounded to about half of the diameter of the bolt in order to fit in the slot in the crank. So I figure I always have this with me, and it's always easy to find. I don't lose this. Now what I'm going to do is screw this bolt into the hole where the cover was, and the idea is to screw the bolt in until it just barely bottoms out. Okay, now when the bolt bottoms out, you want to back it off a little bit, because, bring the camera up here.
Yes.
Okay, so you can see that there's a little line in the cam wheel here, and another one here, and there's one in the cam wheel here, and another one here. Now these lines need to be in as close as they can be in alignment to this surface here. Can you see the cam lobe here?
Yes.
Okay, the cam lobe is pointed up, and this cam lobe, when we rotate the engine around a little bit more, will also be pointed up. You can see how when these lines are all parallel, the cam lobes will either be up or they won't. If they're not up, then the engine is not at the right place to valve adjustment.
Started.
Okay, so at this point I put it in second gear, and I've got a wrench on the crank stop bolt, and I back it out a little bit. And if you look at the cam wheels, you can see those lines coming around. And every time I move it a little bit, I take the crank stop bolt. Aha! Now, suddenly the wrench turned a turn and a half, and the crank is now locked. Okay, you don't want to really torque this down, just want to snug it in there. So now the crank is locked, and no matter what I do with the rear wheel, the cams aren't moving. So now the motor's locked, and we can start to check the valves. Okay. we moved the camera to the other side of the bike. Now, I don't know if you can see this or not, but I've got two feeler gauges out. For the Classic, it's 4 thousandths and 6 thousandths. 4 thousandths, the tighter ones for the intake, and the bigger one, I'm sorry, both valves are the same. There's a minimum clearance and a maximum clearance, so it's a go, no-go test. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the 4 thousandths goes in all the valve between the cam and the shim, and that the 6 thousandth does not. So here we go. Okay, now this is pretty tight, and I think this one's too tight. I can't really get the shim in there, so we're going to have to do the right front intake.
So this was 4,000.
This is the 4,000th.
Okay.
So now we're going to do the other exhaust. You can see how there's a slot here. Can you see the slot?
Yep.
Okay, it's a slot that the shim would go in. Okay, I'm pushing on this shim, and I really can't slip it in there, so both my exhaust valves are too tight. Okay, now I'm going to check intake valve. Okay, 4 thousandths goes easily, and the 6 thousandth doesn't go. So that intake valve is good. And check the other one through the slot. It's better if I come around there. Go through the slot. Okay, the 4 thousandth goes. Maybe you can see there's some drag there. And the 6th I'm sure won't go. Okay, so both of the exhaust valves are too tight, so now let's pull the cams out. Okay, so before you pull these bolts out, it's always a good idea to stuff a rag or paper towel down in there, because if you drop these bolts down in there, it's kind of difficult to get them out. So with a little something stuffed down in there, it's a sure thing that we won't lose them. Okay, so now, okay, these bolts, when they go back in, they're going to be Loctited. So you need a wrench to get them all the way out. You can't just take them out with your fingers. You can stop. Okay, so the cam carrier holder and chain top guide is now been removed. Okay, now we're going to remove 8 bolts to hold the cam carrier in place. I like to crack them all loose first, about a quarter turn or so, before actually removing any of them. I don't know that it makes that much difference, but it makes me happy.
Okay.
Okay, now I've got all the bolts loose, but before I remove the cam carriers, I'm going to take a little tie wrap, and I'm going to tie wrap the chain to the cam wheels. So what this is going to do is this will absolutely keep the cams from losing timing. It is possible to lose time at the bottom, but it's a lot less probable. So now with that like that, I can pull the top cam carrier out. Can lift the cam up. Lift the other cam up. Okay, with the cams up out of the way, I can pull the bottom carrier out. Okay. There we go. Okay, one thing I like to do is take the cams and a bungee, a little tiny bungee cord, and tie them up out of the way, so when I'm working, I don't keep getting in my way. Okay, in this case, we know that both of these exhaust shims are too fat. So I need to just go with the next size thinner. That's why I didn't bother measuring it a bunch. Usually they never change more than one size at a time. So I'm going to try to lift this shim out with a pair of pliers. I'm probably not going to be successful. Okay, so the whole bucket's coming out. Okay, so this is the bucket that goes over the valve, and the shim's in the top. And popping the shim out's tricky. This is a scribe with a carbide tip, and I tend to have pretty good luck with that. But some people use air. Some people can do it with a little screwdriver. There's a shim. Okay. This is a shim set I scored on eBay for a good price. And this is a micrometer. So what I got to do is measure this shim, and then I printed out the chart that's available on the FAQ that shows the millimeters and the inches, because my micrometer is in inches. So I think you can see there, it looks like this is a 2.4 something, so it's either 4.0 or 4.5. I'm going to check it with a micrometer. Okay, so we measured 0.0962, so if you look here, 0.0965 is 245, and since this thing looks like it has a 4 on it, it looks like 2.4, we're going to go with a 2.40 shim. So I go to my shim box, and it's 3 down, and pick out a 2.40 shim. Okay, now that's a used shim, and it really doesn't matter which side goes where, but since this one's used, I'm going to put the side with the ink on it back on top of the bucket. So by using a smaller shim, I'll push that down in there. By using a smaller shim, I'm going to make some extra clearance. Did you get that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so now we're going to take the other exhaust bucket loose. Alright, here it is. And try to pop the thing out. Hey, one other. I've also had good luck with this tool. You can see how the shim is moving. There we go. Alright, so got that out. Okay, so we measured this shim, and this one was a 240. So if I didn't have this big box of shims, what I could have done was taken the shim out of the left side exhaust valve and put it in the right side exhaust valve, and then all I got to do is buy one shim. But since I got the big box, I do it the easy way. Okay, so now we've got the buckets back in with the new shims in them, and what we're going to do is lift up the cams, put the bottom cam carrier back in, and you'll notice that there were pins there, if you look carefully before I stuck it in there. Okay, you want to push that down so it gets seated, and then we're going to set the cams back in their little depressions. Okay. Oh, I definitely lost time. Okay, so when I got the cams back in, I came back around and I looked, and the lines are off, so that means I lost time. So the cam chain has come loose from the crank sprocket when I was jockeying stuff around. So what I need to do is pull the cams back out, kind of jiggle the chain down there, and pull them up and try it again and see what happens. So this time, well, I can't see.
Not quite.
I went the wrong way. Alright, so we're going to go the other way. Okay, so I can't fish the chain back around, so what I'm going to do is cut my tie wraps loose, And I'm going to pull a cam out and I'm going to say, there's one tooth, there's a second tooth. Did it get better? No. Okay, 3 teeth. Oops. 4 teeth. Okay, it's almost there, but not quite. So that's a 5th tooth, and that looks pretty even there. So now I've moved it 5 teeth. I'm going to get the exhaust cam. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now you can see, I don't have them tied, but you can see that when the tensioner goes in, they'll all be in pretty close to a straight line. It really never looks perfect, but I know that that's going to be right. So now I'm going to put the top cam carrier top in there. All right, and I'm going to screw all these bolts in, but I'm not going to tighten them yet, because the thing is, the deal that goes on the end is what pulls the cam carriers into alignment. So I'm going to tighten up these bolts till they're just barely snug, and then I'm going to put the side deal on, and that pulls everything into alignment, and then I tighten the top ones back up.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to put the cam block back in. I'm going to put drop a Loctite on the bolts here, and
Blue
Loctite. I did shake it first. My rags have been removed, and that's poor shop practice, but do what I do, not what I say. We still rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these are supposed to be torqued to something. I don't know, I do a lot of stuff by feel. Just kind of snug them up. You got to remember it's a steel bolt that's going into aluminum, so you don't want to strip it, or you bought yourself a lot of problems. So, okay. Got those guys tightened up. And now I'm going to put the chain tensioner back in. Okay, now the chain tensioner bolt is, there's a washer that's on it, but what I do is I just put the thing in there and screw it in. We've got to turn the motor over at least 1 full turn before we verify the valve adjustment, because what happens is some oil gets under the new shims and keeps them lifted up, and you get false readings unless you turn the motor over at least once. So what I do is I just put this in here, turn the motor over, check it again, then I'm going to take that back out and put some sealant on it. Okay, but before we do that, we got to tighten up the top ones. So there's 8 bolts on the top, and I'm going to snug them all. Again, I'm sure there's some torque spec on this, but I'm going to make them all just kind of snug, and then I'm going to go around and tighten them until I think they feel right. Okay, so what I got to do in order to turn it over is loosen the crank stop bolt. So I'm going to loosen the crank stop bolt up a bunch of turns. Okay, so I'm looking at the cam. Okay, so I'm checking the cams again and they're in the right position, and I'm going to tighten my crank stop bolt up again so that I make sure that I'm checking the timing in the right place. Okay, so now I got another turn and a half or so on my crank stop bolt, and I know that, okay, it's locked in place. Let me get my feeler gauges and check again. Okay, so we checked them again after rotating the engine around and everything's good. Now, what I like to do is wipe this mating surface off all the way around. And the thing is, there's a couple of pockets in the head where oil resides. So what I like to do is not change this $16 gasket every time, but just inspect it. And if you look at the edge of this gasket, you can see that the lip is still pretty good. It's not completely flattened out or anything. So I dip my finger in the oil reservoir there and get some of that almost clean oil and rub it all around this mating surface. Let's just stop it. Okay, so now we're going to put the valve cover back on. It's kind of tricky. Okay, and when you get it on there, what you want to do is look and make sure that the gasket hasn't popped out anywhere. And then you take your these things. Now you don't have to replace these every time. They're kind of expensive too. I've been using the same ones. I got 42,000 miles on this bike. Never changed them. So what you want to do with these is get them all in there, and you can see how the valve cover slops around. So you want to get them all in sort of finger tight before you start to tighten anything down. Okay, so I got all the screws back in, and before I tighten anything up, I want to wiggle this around with all the screws just in there slightly snugged, and make sure, looking at the gasket around the edge, that it's sticking out everywhere. And then I'm going to torque it using my calibrated torque wrench to the proper torque value, which is to say just make it kind of snug. Okay, so after I got the valves all adjusted and got this thing buttoned up, I pulled this back out and I just put a little bit of black silicone sealant. You can use any color you want. Just a little bit on the threads, and then snugged it. It's a big wrench, so it doesn't need to be real snug. It has a crush. It has a flat washer on there, and so I've never changed it, and it's not going to leak. It's going to be fine. The other thing that we need to do is remove the crank stop bolt completely and reinsert the plug. Okay, there's crank stop bolt. This is the plug. Now, in theory, you ought to change this copper washer, but again, I've been using the same one for about 40,000 miles, so I'm not going to worry about it. If it ever leaks, which I don't think it will, I'll get another copper washer. Oh, I like these ball tip wrenches. You can't use them to break stuff loose or tighten it completely up, but you can screw it in from a bad angle, which is great when you're doing stuff like around the brake pedal, or around the brake pedal on the other side when you're taking the countershaft cover off, or when you're working around your shift lever. Okay, so that's in there. And that's snug. Alright, now we're going to work on changing the rear tire. So you want to get a 4mm wrench, and I find it a whole lot easier just to go ahead and remove the chain guard. Make your life easy. So there's 3 screws on the Classic anyway. There's 3 screws on the right side and 2 on the left side to get this thing off. Okay, so with the chain guard removed, take the wrench in your toolkit, and you can kind of back that out a little bit to get some more torque. Get that on there, and you loosen it up a bit. And when the bolt starts to spin, take the other wrench and you put it on the other side, Okay, now the axle won't go forward, so what we have to do is loosen these up. So half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4, half 5, half 6, half 7, half 8, half 9, half 10. We'll do the same on the other side. 2, half 3, half 4, half 5, half 6, half 7, half 8, half 9, half 10. Okay, now. Okay, so now the axle's fully forward. However, before we take the chain off, since we are going to change the countershaft sprocket, we want to break the nut loose on the countershaft. Okay, to remove the countershaft on a bike after 96, so 97 and later, they have this nut, and this takes a 30mm socket, so it helps to have a 30mm socket and a breaker bar, because sometimes this isn't easy. Then there's this washer, there's this bent tab washer. So what we got to do is get these tabs back flat using a precision tool. Okay, so now we can get our socket on there and the countershaft sprocket, and what we're going to do is put the bike in gear, first gear. Okay, so we're pulling against the motor, foot on the brake. Okay, try pulling. Alright, this is a tough one. I'm going to get a cheater bar. Okay. Okay, so the nut's off. And then this thing comes off. Now, when you get these in, they're new, you can use them more than once. This one's been used a couple times, so I'm going to go ahead and replace it. I got a new one. Okay, stop. Okay, so I've got the master link. I've got a clip type link, and here's the master link right here. I'm just doing that to make my life easier. Now, with the wheel pulled forward, you can get the chain to come off and hang out of the way. And with that like that, you can pull the axle out, and the tire sort of drops out of the bike. Now, this is the sprocket carrier, and that's the rubber donut. The GS's and the Dakars use a different one. The classics have a one-piece one. And so we're going to look at the sprocket. Look at sprocket. We're going to take the rear sprocket off, look at it, and replace it. This is from a classic. I think the one for the later models looks different, but you can see that there's these nylock nuts on the back, and then bolts go in from the front. And this is a sprocket specialist sprocket that I used the last time. So first thing I'm going to do is loosen up the bolts. Now the bolts are loosened up. I'm going to take a ratchet, and this is a 13 millimeter, and I'm just going to go ahead and remove the bolts. So coming off the bottom is both the nut and the washer. So we're going to do that 6 times. Okay, so we've got all the nuts. We've got all the nuts off. Now we're going to take the last of the bolts out. Kind of interesting. And then we're going to compare this sprocket to the to a new sprocket, because that's how you really know that you need to change it. All right, so we've got the old sprocket and the new sprocket. One thing I want to point out is this sprocket says 47 on it. I don't know if you can see it, but this one does too. When you put the sprocket on, you want to make sure that the number is facing the outside. Now, if you look at the teeth, you can see that the old teeth are a lot pointier than the new teeth, and also you can see that the groove is symmetrical on the new one, and it's not on the old one. So if we put them like this, then you can see that the old sprocket is worn, which is why I'm replacing it. Okay. All right, now I cleaned the hub up a little bit. Why not? And with the 47 showing on the outside, just put the sprocket on, and then put the 6 bolts in. Alright, and then I'm going to use brand new nuts, because these are nylock nuts, and you're really not supposed to use them more than once, and the ones that are on there I used a couple of times already, so I bought some new ones. Okay, with the washers and the nuts on, I'm going to tighten up all these bolts until they just stop. Don't want to really torque anything yet. So this way, the sprocket is sure to be centered on the carrier instead of being slightly off center. Okay, so with all the bolts in and snug, I'm going to torque them. You could look at the torque spec, or if you think you know what you're doing, you can just rely on your hands. So I did opposite ones, kind of like torquing lug nuts. Want to do them opposite. Now we're going to do the top chain roller. So this is a 10 millimeter bolt here. This one's the easier of the two. So you just take the bolt out. And the BMW rollers need to be lubed, except the thing is they're really cheap. So I bought an aftermarket roller that I'm going to install, I hope. So this is a BMW roller. It's a couple of pieces of rubber, and I normally stuff grease in there, and this thing just kind of wallows around with a bunch of grease in it, and it doesn't seem to me to be a very efficient rolling mechanism. So I bought this MSR. There's another one that's available. This particular one is part number 239915 is black. They come in colors. I tried to get a blue one and a red one, but the place I wanted to buy them couldn't order them, so I went with this one. So you can see it's about the same thickness, and it uses the same bolt, even though it comes with a bolt, and you can see that it's got bearings in it. So this is going to roll a lot better. I'm going to have to get some washers to make up the difference in the thickness. Okay. Alright, so I used two washers on the side with the head of the bolt, and one additional washer, and that's the original washer that was on the other side of the bolt when I removed the old roller. And now I'm just going to screw this original bolt right back in there. Okay, let's turn on. This is the bottom roller. So what I'm going to do is get a 13 millimeter wrench on the nut and remove the bolt. And this is also the brake pivot bolt. So this gets kind of interesting because there's some washers and stuff in here. You got to make sure you don't lose anything. Okay, got the nut out, and there's the bolt. Washer, bolt all the way out, and now here's the roller. A lot of parts here. Okay, so for this roller, I'm just going to lube it. You can see that this one doesn't get hit by the chain much because this is the lower roller. So I'm just going to clean it and re-lubricate it. Okay. All right, so I need to get some grease on this thing. Just going to use some chassis grease. Nothing special. And having sort of cleaned it out, gotten the grit out of it. Hopefully I can get a bunch more miles off it before I have to change it with one of those nice rollers like I put on the top. So I'll grease it up. Right, and then this goes back on the brake pedal like that, which I have to wiggle in. This is all lubricated. I'm going to slip this in here. I'm going to hook the spring back up to the loop on the frame and get the actuator rod, which I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the tip of the brake cylinder actuator rod and shove this little guy up in here. Okay, now I'm going to get this bolt in from the outside. Alright, so I got the bolt in. I'm going to put the washer and the nut back on and tighten it up, and that's good to go. Like the center stand has two grease fittings, one on each side. So I'm going to take my grease gun and put it on the grease fittings. You can see how the grease pops out. You got to make sure that the grease does indeed pop out. And then you pop another one. And then you take the extra grease and you wipe it off because it's just nasty and it's going to get on stuff. And that's all there is to greasing the center stand. All right, now we're going to remove the front sprocket. We took the nut off earlier, and the washer, the little wave washer, the lock washer. So I got a new lock washer. But one of the things I like to do is leave the chain in place and just kind of pull it out of the way and pull the sprocket off with the chain there, because it makes it easier to get the new chain back on. You don't have to fish it through. You can pull it through with the old one. Now, this sprocket is not a BMW sprocket. This is a BMW sprocket, and I found actually the BMW sprocket, if you're going with the stock 16 teeth, I think it is. Is it 16? 17?
15? I don't remember.
I don't remember. Yeah, 16. It's a 16 tooth sprocket. So if you go with the stock sprocket, BMW's cheaper, and it's got this rubber stuff on it. This is rubber here, which makes it run quieter. Now when you go to put the BMW sprocket on, it says EXT. That goes to the exterior, and the other sprockets, the flat side goes in and the lip goes out. So you can see, well, it's kind of hard to see, but the sprocket is worn. So I'm going to replace this, and it just slips on. It's supposed to just slip on. Let's see what happens. And there are some teeth there. There, so it just slips right on. Now I'm going to put the chain back around it and make my life a little easier. We can't really torque it down because the rear wheel's not on, but what we can do is put this on, make sure that it's going to go on there. Yep, that's going to go on so it won't get forgotten. And I'm going to take the nut. Now the nut requires Loctite, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of put this on here a couple of turns with my fingers and call that good until I get the rear of the bike put back together. We're going to put the rear wheel back on. So the first thing is to put the cush drive. So you can see that there's a set of these with a slot between them. So you want to put the slots on the slot in the wheel, and then we're going to put the rear sprocket on there. Okay, and sneak this past the caliper. Split the pads a little bit to get the thing in there. And now comes kind of the tricky part. Gotta get the axle in. So one of the things that you can do is slip a 2x4 under it. Another one is to just put your foot under there. So the first thing is to get the axle in. You might want to move the camera. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is get the axle in from over here so that the adjuster slides up and back. And then we need to get it through the caliper. So the caliper is going to slide up and back, out through the caliper. So now we need to get it up through the wheel. Okay, stop. All right, so now we need to raise the tire up in order to get the axle to go through it. So one way to do that is to slip a 2x4 under it. Now raise it up some. And you get your foot under there. All right, so now I've got the axle through the wheel. Got to get through the adjuster on the other side. There we are. Okay, so now you need to put the washer and the nut. I'm going to put the washer on and the nut.
It's a new nut.
I'm replacing the nut just because I got some from McMaster Car, and they cost about $5 for 10 of them, and they're about I don't know, $3 each at the dealer. So I figure with 42,000 miles on the bike, it deserves a new nut. So now what I'm going to do is tighten the axle nut, but I'm not really going to tighten it. So it's just on there kind of snug, so you can see the axle still slipping around, which is what I'm after, because I still need to change the chain. So I'm going to put the chain on. Now the chain's on the bike, and now I'm going to break the master link and just roll the new chain on. All right, I realized I'm going to need to cut the chain because the chain I have is too long. So the first thing I'm going to do is just pull the old chain off. I always install silicone sealant on the master clip, on the master link clip, so that the link doesn't come off. And okay. So now we're getting the master link off the clip. There's the clip and side plate. So you got to work the side plate a little bit. And now the side plate's off. And the O-rings. And the master link comes off. Okay, there's a couple O-rings on the other side. Now if we had the right length chain, we could just stick it on here with the master link, pull it on, and we'd be done. But since we don't have the right length chain, I'm just going to pull this guy off. Now I'm going to do the sizing. I know the one that came off is the right length. So one thing you can do is pull the new one on and fit it, and then cut it the extra right off. But it's just as easy to take the old one, put it alongside the new one. Make sure you get the right place on it. So I've looked and I've lined up the pins all the way up the chain to make sure that it's the right length. Now it should be 10 links too long. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. All right, this is a chain breaker. So the way the chain breaker works, that's about a $20 tool available in most motorcycle shops. This is the link I'm going to break. So what you do, clamp it on the link. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes? Snug that up just a bit so the chain doesn't come loose. And then turn this until the pin comes out. Now the thing is, sometimes there's a pin inside there, and sometimes it becomes cocked. So you want to turn it back every now and then. tell you what, stop the camera. All right, so we had to like take a little break, and it's kind of hard to get this thing started, but once you get the pin starting to come through, once you get the pin moving, it cranks through pretty easily. You can see the pin coming out the other end here. And the trick is not to break the pin in the tool. Extra pins are available, replacement tool parts. Okay, so then when it gets easy, there's the pin. That's the link pin. And then I'm going to put my tool back in the position I like it to be in, which is with the pusher pin wound up out of the way so it's not going to get damaged. And the clamp bolt run in pretty good. Okay, this will just pull apart. So there are a couple of extra O-rings here, which we can either leave on or take off, because the master link is going to come with some extra O-rings itself. So we're going to run this over the rear wheel and through here. You're going to make sure that you go under the roller that we just replaced. If you go over the roller, you're going to have trouble. That's the top roller. You go under the top roller and over the bottom roller. Okay, and we're going to roll this around the counter shaft. Come over the bottom roller. Now the thing is, we want to get the ends of the chain lined up on the sprocket so that it makes it easier to put the master link in. Okay. So this DID chain came with a master link, which I found out the hard way that it's important to use the right master link for the chain that you have, because different brands of chain use master links that are not identical. Now this type of master link is a press fit master link, and you need a special tool to go with this master link. I don't have that tool, and I don't like the press fit links anyway, so I'm going to use a clip type. So I've got a clip type master link here, and you can see the clip type master link, there's this little collar here, plus it comes with the clip, and the clip's going to go in the collar when the thing's installed. And the crimp type is like that. When you put this guy on, you need to take a a punch or the special tool and swedge that out after you've got the side plate on. I don't like that kind. I like this kind, so that's what I'm going to use. Now both of them come with a little packet of grease. So what you want to do is grease up the pins. And then you want to put it in backwards. And the reason you want to put it in backwards is you get some grease inside the roller of the chain. And then apply a bit more grease and put it in frontwards. And that's gonna run some more grease through. And if you put some more grease on the ends of the pins, then when you pull it back out, it'll get even more grease in there. Okay, now we're going to take our little O-rings, push them on there. Okay, I've already got one on there, so there's that one. Okay, now we've got to get the side plate on. So there's several ways to do this. The way that I've found that I'm happy with is I took an old side plate and I drilled it out with a drill bit so that it's oversized, so that I can use this to squeeze the new side plate on. And you can use vice grips or a C-clamp or whatever. So I'm putting the one end of the vice grips on the pin on the inside, and then this just slips right off, and you can see that the surface here that this thing needs to hook into, the groove is there. Actually, that's not quite on there far enough, so I'm going to go again. Alright, so I put it on there, and now this thing slips right on here. You can see how it's catching in the groove on both grooves. So that link is pressed on there far enough. So having done that, I'm going to take a little bit of spray cleaner and a rag. Stop getting the rag. A little bit of spray cleaner. I got the brake cleaner. Spray some on a rag or a paper towel and clean the side of the link off. You don't want to get a whole lot of stuff in the O-ring. You just want to try to get the side of the roller, the side of the link cleaned off, and the master link clip cleaned off. And clean this again. Now, the thing to put the clip on is you want the closed end in the direction of travel. So we're going to put it on like this. Need to get another screwdriver. So I had trouble with the screwdriver, so I'm going to try pliers. Okay, that's on. So I'm going to wipe it again. So that's good and clean, and it's dry. And the reason that we do that is so that we can put a little bit of silicone seal on here, and it will stick to everything. Alright, doesn't take much. And you stick it to the link, and you stick it on the pins, and you stick it in between the center of the link so it sticks to the side plate. And you want to give that overnight to dry if you can before you ride the bike, so that it has a chance to set up good. Okay, one more thing is maybe take a screwdriver and pry the side plates up a little bit to make sure that they're maintaining some tension on the side of the master link clip. So what that's going to do is give it a little extra incentive not to come off. Okay, so we have the chain on, and so now we need to adjust it. So you can see there's a whole lot of chain slop. So what I'm going to do is tighten it till the washer doesn't slop around anymore. So what I want to do is, I don't want to be able to like slide the axle around, but I do want to be able to move it. So I counted the turns when I took the wheel off, and if I hadn't replaced the chain, I would just count them to go back, and it would probably be maybe a half a turn or a turn more. But in this case, let's just half 2, half 3, half 4, half 5, half 6, half 7. We'll do 7. Half 1, half 2, half 3, half 4, half 5, half 6, half 7. Alright, so let's see where we are. Now, I've got these marks here. So this guy has got the 5 mark. And you can see that chain kind of looks okay. The 5 marks in the window, so I'm going to check it on the other side. No, it's way off center. Okay, so that side was up back a little too far. So maybe we'll give it another half 1. Half 1. Okay. Now with a worn chain, you got to do this in a lot of places, but with a brand new chain, it's the same all over. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now the way to measure your chain, so if you read the tag on the side, it says 20 to 30 millimeters chain tension without load. So 25 millimeters is an inch. So we're looking at about an inch to maybe inch and a quarter of free play. So now if I put this here and push the chain up, I've got this set to about an inch and a quarter. So that looks to be just about right. It might be a little on the loose side, but a little on the loose side is okay. A little on the tight side is going to wear out a chain. A new chain is going to loosen up, so I'll probably have to adjust it again within a week or so. But in any case, I want to check these marks, and I see the 6 mark is just in front of the back of the window. So check the one on the other side, and it is indeed symmetrical. If it's not symmetrical, your wheel's going to be cocked and your tire's going to wear faster. So now, what I want to do is tighten this up. And I figure it's supposed to be about 100 Newton meters. Yeah, that's about it right there. So having gotten that tightened up, I'm going to take my wrench and stick it in here and give it about a quarter of a turn on the adjuster. So, well, this one's getting a little more. What that's going to do is keep the adjuster from falling out. Okay, so now I'm going to take the bike off the center stand and see what the chain adjustment's like. And it still looks plenty good. The next thing that we need to do is tighten up the countershaft sprocket. So I'm going to put it in gear and pump my brakes to get them back since I pushed the piston out of the back up in the caliper. Okay, I want to clean my my nut a little bit here, get some of the crud out of it, and our friend Loctite Blue 242 or whatever it's supposed to be. Put a little bit of that on the countershaft, because you don't want to lose this nut. And we'll put the nut on. Oh, the nut's relieved. One side's flat, the flat side goes out, the side that's relieved goes in. Okay. 30 millimeter wrench. All right, now we need to step on the brake, put the whammy on it. Okay, that's pretty tight. Now, this is a nut that uses a lock washer with a bendy tab. So there's one of the bendy tabs. We'll get it. Gotta get the bendy tab to bend some. And with the tab bent firmly up against the nut and the Loctite, I don't think this is going to come off. Okay, I don't need to do the rear brakes, but since we're here, we're going to take a look at it. Now, this part is the pad, and the metal part is the backing material. So you can see how when the pads get real thin, you can measure this, and the brake material is supposed to be at least, I forget, 2 or 3 millimeters thick. And if it's not that thick, then they need to be replaced. So you can imagine if these are worn, what's going to happen is they're going to get closer and closer together. Well, before you change the pads, what you need to do is take a screwdriver or something and stick it in between them and push the piston back. So the piston's in this side of the caliper, and by pushing the piston back, what you're doing is making it so that you've got room to put the new brakes in, because the old ones are so thin they'll come out real easily, but you can't get the new ones in until you've got the piston pushed back. Now there's one thing you got to look out for: the reservoir, which is under the right side cover near the brake master cylinder. When you're actually doing the brakes, if the reservoir is near full, you're going to need to open the bleed screw when you push these back and squirt some of the brake fluid out on a towel or something, because it won't go back in the reservoir if the reservoir is full. So all you need to do is pull this clip out, okay, and then this pin comes out. I need to get a tool. I checked in the book, and it's 1.5 millimeters is the minimum thickness for the pad. But so here's a punch, and pin comes out, and you can see the pin has a little collar on it, and it's a good idea to clean this up and maybe put a little lube on it, but you don't want to get any lube on the brake pads. And the pads just pretty much fall right out. So people ask, well, can I do that with the rear wheel on? And as a matter of fact, you can. You can get the rear pads out with the wheel on. The trick is getting the new ones back in, and if you figure out how to do that, I'd be real happy to hear about it. But you can see this is the piston, and it's pushed all the way back in here. So now I'm going to act like we're putting new pads in. So you put the pad in, and the pad has to go in sort of from the outside. Getting that? Okay, and the other pad goes in, has to go in kind of from the middle and then go up. All right? And the pin goes back in. Okay, and the pin is not quite far enough in, so I'm going to have to bang on it with something else. Maybe a nail. Alright, so now the pin is in far enough so that you can see the hole, and with the hole showing, put the pin back in. It holds everything together. Okay, then what you want to do is get the pads separated, and we're going to put the wheel back on. Now the thing is, after you change your brake pads, what you're going to want to do when you get the wheel back on is make sure that you don't need to bleed your brakes. It's probably a good idea to bleed them just in case. Alright, now we're going to do front brakes. These brakes are on a GS, but the method to do them, to change the pads, is the same between the Classic and the GS. Okay.
Stop it?
No, still wrong.
Okay, first.
So the first thing we're going to do is pull the pin out. And it's easiest to knock the pin out with the caliper attached to the bike.
Okay. Almost out.
Okay, so the pin's out now. And now, got to loosen the bolts.
8 millimeters.
8 millimeter Allen to loosen the caliper mounting bolts.
Very easy. Oops.
That's okay.
That's the old one.
Old brake. Okay, so now the bolts are out, and we're going to pull the caliper loose and get the other pad out. Oh, both pads are out. Okay, so now we've got to push the pistons back in. The brake pads that Artyom has taken out are actually only about half of their wear limit, but he doesn't like the feel of those pads, so he wants to change them. If you look at the groove in the brake pad, if you cannot see that groove, then your brake pads are definitely need to be replaced. You want to put the pad in that goes against the pistons first, and then put the other pad in. And then the pin is going to go in.
Yeah, I'm just trying to compress.
We sprayed a little bit of WD-40 on the pin to clean it, and now putting just a light coat of grease on here, because the pads are going to move on that pin, and the pin won't wear so much if it just has a little bit of grease. Okay, so now the pin slides in and drives home, and then the clip goes in. If the hole's not showing, the pin's got to be knocked in further. But that could be done after the caliper's back on the bike. Just don't forget. And at this point, he's prying the pads. Now, just one drop of Loctite on the end of the bolt. Doesn't take much. Okay. And now I'm going to torque the bolts to the proper spec.
Which is not much.
Okay, hang on. Just wait a second. In order to seat the pin, he's going to take a drift and just knock it in with a hammer to seat it all the way. And just like the rear brakes, you knock it in until you can see the hole so that you can get the little clip back in. The pin goes in, and you want to make sure that the curved end of the pin faces the caliper. And that's all there is to changing the front brake pads, other than maybe bleeding them. Alright, so now we're going to break the tire loose. So what I like to do is take the valve stem nut off, and I use these valve caps that have a valve stem tool built into them, because then I don't have to wonder where I can find a valve stem tool. And the first thing you do is pull the valve stem out. Alright, so I've got some Ruglide in a spray bottle, and I'll put some of this around the edge because this makes life easy. Now, the first thing to try is stepping on it. It's a cheap tire, so I may actually break the bead loose like this. If not, at least I'm giving the Ruglide a chance to work down in there. Doesn't look like the bead's breaking loose. So I'm going to take my tire irons and work it around. There it goes. Okay, now with a good tire, this is a Chen Sheng tire I bought in Enid, Oklahoma on my way to the jailbreak last year. But with a good tire, it's quite a bit more difficult than that. Okay, so now you need to break the bead loose on the other side. You don't want to lay the thing on the disc. So let me get my Ruglide. Okay. All right, having a little trouble. There's a couple of things we can do. All right, one of the things we can do is I've got this trash can made out of a 20-gallon drum, and it's got a piece of hose on it. And so what that means is I can work the tire like this. Another thing you can do is get some chunks of 2x4, put them on the ground in order to work it. So I'm going to just kind of work the bead here. Might have to put a little more root glide on there. Okay, a little more root glide. These rims are the toughest rims I've ever seen on anything. It's because there's no drop center to them to speak of. Ah, there we go. Okay, so the beads pop loose. All right, now, the bead loose. Going to lever the first bead off. So the trick is you want to drive the bead into this. This is the drop to the rim right here. You want to push the bead on this side as far up in there as you can. You don't want to be right at the valve stem. So you push the bead up in there as far as you can. You can take your levers. This time we go with 3 irons. Usually one of them just falls out. Kind of like that. All right, there's one. There's 2. Oh, come on. There we go. There's 3. You don't want to put pressure on the disc because you'll warp it. All right, that got it. So now, there we go. So the first bead is off. So the first bead off, got to get the tube out. Push the valve stem in. This part's always kind of painful on the hands. Okay, there's the tube. So now, got to get the second bead off, which is always easier. Okay, once you get this guy started, normally, lordy, once you get it started, normally you can just break it off the tire. I mean, break it off the wheel. All right. And there's the wheel. All right, so we've got the wheel off, and what I'm going to do is bang on the spokes and make sure none of them need to be adjusted, because if they need to be adjusted while you have the tire off, it's the best time. Okay, none of the spokes are dead, so you don't get to see tightening the spokes. Okay, while we've got the wheel off, it's a good time to check the wheel bearings. So to do that, you stick your finger in there. Actually, you remove the cup, and you stick your finger in there, and you can feel the wheel bearing rotate. And if it feels real graunchy it needs to be replaced. So this guy feels pretty good. That guy feels really good. And we'll do the carrier bearing as well. Oh yeah, that feels fine. Okay. Alright, so I've got the tire here. Bought it mail order, save money. So the first thing I want to do is remove the sticker, and then want to kind of bang it a little bit and see if there's any crud that's gotten in it, because if you get, I don't know, leaf crud or something gets kicked up in it from shipping or the garage or the carton that's shipped in or in the factory, I mean the warehouse, that crud can get in your tube and give you a flat. So I always like to try to get rid of that stuff. In this case, I got a piece of crud right here I'm trying to get. And I got it. Okay. So now, the thing you want to do is find the direction of rotation and the balance mark. Gotta get my glasses for that. Alright, so here's a rotation arrow. Now remember, the brake goes on the left side, so that rotation arrow is going to be like this. So this tire can only go on this way. So now let's check. There's some balance marks, and those are the only balance marks. Okay, so I'm going to get some Ruglide, and I'm going to plan this so it goes on the right way. So we're going to put this bead over this edge of the rim, and so that the disc is up when we're trying to lever the final bead over, so the balance marks are going to be down. So first we're going to do this rim, this bead. And we'll worry about getting the balance marks in the right place in a minute. Okay, so now, oh yeah, the drop center. This is the drop center. And you want to make sure, this is not much of a drop center when you compare it to a lot of other wheels. You want to make sure you have a rim band or at least some duct tape or electrical tape around there and a hole for your valve stem. You don't want the spoke nipples to be touching the tube, because they will wear holes in it. Okay, so now back to the tire irons. Okay, this is a Metzler, and it's a real stiff tire. Probably should have put it in front of the space heater for a while. Loosen it up. Okay, so we've got a couple tire irons in there, and with any luck, the bead's going to pop over. There we go. Okay, there. So we got the first bead in. Try not to lose the tire irons inside the tire. Right. Okay, so now I'm gonna reuse this tube. So before I do, I'm gonna blow it up. Now we'll put the stem back in, the core, and put a little spit on that so it seals real well. I could put Ruglide on there or something, but in any case, I'll put that bad boy in there. Then I'm going to look at this tube real carefully. I want to inspect it here where it would rub the nipples for the spokes, and see if I see or feel anything that looks to be a wear spot. And I think we're doing okay. So what I like to do is put talcum powder on the tube, because what this does is it lets the tube slip around inside the tire and run cooler. So what I do is put some on the inside, kind of rub it around with my hand. I do this every time, so where did all the talcum powder go from last time? It just kind of got used up, I guess. Okay, so now I got a bunch of talcum powder on there. And now, I'm going to fit it in the tire. So, I have to find the valve stem hole. And I'm going to let some of the air out of this, but not a whole lot. Okay, so now you can see how it's got some air in it, but it's still squishy. The idea is, if you don't have any air in it, you're more liable to pinch it, and if you have too much in it, it's impossible to fit the tire. So what I want to do is get the tube in here. I cleaned the rim real good. You didn't see that part. So we stuff the tube in all the way around. Okay, now it's a kind of difficult part, and that is getting the stem, the valve stem, come through the hole. And different people have different methods. Some folks like to tie a piece of fishing line or dental floss or something on there, but I prefer just the brute force method, maybe some cussing. Okay, I got it. So now, as soon as you get it, you want to get that nut on there so that it doesn't back out, but you don't want to screw the nut all the way on. Just get it on, screwed on there till it's till the valve stem's poking out the other end. Of course, I'm trying to screw the nut on with my left hand, and I'm right-handed. Okay, now the fun begins. The first thing you want to do is get the marks lined up with the valve stem, because most manufacturers mark the tire at the lightest place. So you want to put that at the valve stem. And you can see how the valve stem's kind of turning back and forth a little bit. You want to try to get it centered, but this is not the final fitment because it's probably going to rotate around as we lever it on there. Now we've got the disc up. The first bead's on there. It's time for some more roux glide. All right, now the fun begins. Okay, as before, you don't want to start or finish at the valve. So what I'm going to do is try to walk this tire on here. Okay, we're coming past the valve now. Alright, we want to get the bead way down in there. Alright, here's where it starts getting tricky. Almost. Maybe I can work that with my heels. Oh. Okay, one thing we could try here is a C-clamp. Stop the thing. Okay, we've got to get that last little bit of the bead over. So it looks like it's going to take just walking it on. Just walking it on with the turns. There it goes. Okay. Alright. Now, the tire's fully mounted, but the bead's not seated, and we've got to make sure that the marks are at the valve stem. So, they look to be pretty close there. So it's time to inflate the tire. So we've got to get the nut screwed on enough to get the valve stem out far enough to get the inflator on. Okay, now we're going to inflate the tire and seat the beads. Okay, so you know the beads have been seated when you can see this edge here. You see this little line is equidistant from the rim all the way around, and it is on both sides. There's a couple of things you can do if it won't seat. Of course, if you use Glide, it'll seat easily, but if you don't, sometimes you can pick up the tire and beat it where it didn't come out, whatever. Anyway, I run it up to 50 pounds, which is not where I'm going to run the tire. And I tighten the nut up. Then I take the valve stem back out, completely let all the air out of the tube, and so that the tube can settle, and then I inflate it to the final pressure. Okay, so now with the tube totally deflated, it totally relaxes. The bead is still seated all the way around the tire, so now when the tube is inflated, it will inflate evenly and no place on the tube will be strained. So I don't think you want to hear this thing inflate again. So now we're going to remove the swing arm and grease the swing arm bearings and the suspension linkage. We've got to pull the suspension linkage before we pull the swing arm. So I've assembled some of the tools that we need here. We're going to need a pair of 17mm wrenches and a pair of 22mm sockets and a 10mm Allen and a 19mm wrench, and I think that's going to be everything that we need to do this job. Oh, and a screwdriver. There are two of these little clips, which if you're lucky you won't break them when you open them up, and you got to open both of these. There's one there and one a little further up, so that you can take the brake line loose, because you want to remove the caliper. And there's a metal clip here. You just kind of pop it out, and then the caliper's free. All right. We're going to take our 10mm Allen, and a 19. Alright. Now what that does is gets the links loose. Now the swing arm's hanging down. And then we get 2 17s. Oops. 2 17s to take this loose. Now this bolt goes in from the inside. The other bolt goes in from the inside also. And you really have to do them that way. And you have to take them off in this order, because the other bolt goes into a welded nut. So once we get this nut off, take this bolt out. Oh, okay, got to do the other bolt first. And this bolt comes out. It's a short bolt, and then the link comes out. We'll put that aside. And then this bolt can come out. You got to remember to put them back in the right order. Okay, so now we have both links. And then we're going to prop up the swing arm so we can remove the link. Okay, just take a little piece of wood, prop up the swing arm, and then we can use the 217s. Okay, this is actually the shock bolt. If you have a stock shock, there's a captive nut. Okay. Now I gotta get another tool. When I said I thought I had all the tools I need, I made a mistake. Got to have a 13 and a 6mm Allen. So what I'm going to do now is loosen the brake pivot bolt. To get it out of the way. This is the bolt that holds the roller on the Classic. This is just so that I can get the wrench in, get the other guy. Okay, now I'm going to use an 8mm Allen from the other side and a 17 on that nut. All right, I've got the swing arm up out of the way, got the wrench on the nut, and I'm using a ball tip Allen, but you can do it with a standard. And now, with the nut off, I can get the bolt out and free the linkage completely. Okay. Stop a second. This is the link, and you need to pay attention to the fact that the bump goes up and the top one goes toward the back. So when you go to put it in, you don't get confused. Okay. Take the swing arm off. First thing you do is pop these two caps off, the little plastic caps, and then you can see there's either the head of the bolt or the nut is in there. So you pop them loose on both sides, and then you get the two 22mm sockets, and you put one on one side and one on the other. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. And get in there. There we go. Alright, now we've got the nut off. There's a washer in there. And then take a screwdriver or other object and the swing arm bolt will pull out. Now the swing arm itself is loose, at this point, but it's sort of jammed in there. There's some parts you got to watch for when you take it out. So let me get the chain out of the way. Ready? Ready?
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay. And pull the swing arm out. Up. Pull the screwdriver out. And the swing arm comes straight out the back. Okay. All right, this is a nylon washer and it's stuck to the bike, so I'm going to leave it there. And down here is another nylon washer, and these guys want to fall out, and they're kind of hard to get back in when you put the thing together. That's the hard part, is getting it back in there with these in place. So that's what you got to watch for. Those are the parts that fall out and make your life a little difficult. Now, before we take any of the bearings out, what we want to do is get everything real clean so that there's so that no crud goes in. And the way that these bearings are, there's an inner race, and it just pops right out. Can you see in there with the camera how the bearings are? Okay, those are all loose needles in there, and the needles will come right out. You don't want to take them out, but just for the purposes of education, we'll kind of pop them loose. Okay, can you see the loose needle there? So the needles get loose, and you don't want any of the needles to fall out, but you want to pack this bearing. So the best way to do that is just to get your finger. Let me get the needles back in here. Or stop the camera. All right, so with your finger fairly clean, you're going to get a little blob of grease, and you want to get it in there and press it into the bearings. You want to try to press it in there so that you don't knock them out. If you knock them out, they're kind of a pain in the butt to get back in. You got to get them all in. So put a good coating of grease in there. Okay, so that's a nice fresh coat of grease, and then you want to push the grease into the bearings all the way around. All right, and then we take the race and slip it back in there, and if all goes well, none of the bearings will come out. If they come out, you have to take the race back out, do it again. All right, so that worked well, and that bearing feels very nice. So we'll go ahead and do the other one, so you can turn it off. All right, when I did the second one, when I pressed the race in, the bearing, one of the needles came out. So one way to get the needles back in is to just take a small screwdriver, and you can position it in there. So there it is. Make sure it has plenty of grease on it, and push the race back in again. Okay, and that time. Now on the link, this bearing is identical to the ones in the short links, but you can see that the bearings at the other ends are larger, and this is not the same bearing at this end, and you can see, I don't know if you can see, it's a double bearing. Can you see in there?
Yep.
Okay, and it's the same with the one at the small end. The one at the small end uses two of the same bearings that we already greased, so this one is also a double bearing.
Okay.
Okay? All right, with the double bearing, we're going to have to be sure that we get in from each end, and we need to make sure that all the needles are seated, because it's possible when you push the inner race through that you'll knock a bearing into the gap. You'll knock a needle into the gap between the two bearings. So we want to be real careful how we do this. I don't know if you can see, there's some of the old grease is coming out on my finger. That's fine. Get plenty of new grease in there, and then we'll spin the bearing around. All right, so that's got plenty of grease. Now we'll push this in. Okay, there's no needles in there, and we can spin this around to make sure that everything gets greased up real well. Do the same with the other end. Okay, now we're going to do the swing arm bearings. These are a little trickier. when you push this out, there's these two little felt seals. We actually lube the bearings the same way, but remove the felt seals and we'll lube the bearings the same way, and then we'll push one felt seal in and push the race back in. So you can see the bearings in there. We're going to just go ahead and lube them the same way. All right. So we've got the bearing greased. I'm going to push the felt seal in. Hopefully it'll stay. And the race has a lip on it. The lip goes to the inside. The lips face the shock. So we're going to push this in, and then it pushes some grease out the other end. I'm going to wipe off that grease. You can see there's some old grease mixed in with the new. And then we're going to take this other felt seal and press it into the recess there. This is where it gets a little tricky. It's all got to stay in there, or it's very hard to get the swing arm back in. So with both of those seals flush, this half is done, and then we'll do the other half. All right, so we're going to put the felt seal in on this side and push the race through, and it pushes out a bunch of grease. So we'll wipe the grease off and then put the seal on the other side. This is where it's a little tricky. You can see it's kind of burping out some grease there. Okay, so the seal's in both sides and the race is in. So we've greased all the bearings and we're ready to start to put it back together. There's the nylon washers that go on the end of the races. And these go on the outsides of both sides of the swing arm. And there's a nylon washer that lives up in the bike on each side. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. So you need to get the chain up out of the way. So I'm going to temporarily put it above the roller. You have to remember to pull it down off the roller. And now, look at the bolt. And the bolt, the paint's gone, or the plating's gone a little bit off the bolt, but it's not in bad shape. It's not really scored. So the bolt can go right back in there. So now comes the tricky part. Alright, so I got the bolt mostly in, but I want to stop and make sure that none of the washers came out. So I'm going to take a light and look up in there and make sure that all my washers are in the right places. The swing arm looks pretty tight, so it looks like they're all in the right place. It looks pretty tight looking laterally. So now all I need to do, keep the swing arm lined up and knock the bolt in. Now with the swing arm back in, I'll put the washer and the nut back on and then torque it. With the swing arm bolt in and the washer and the nut on it, I'm now going to torque it to the proper torque spec. And you can measure it with a torque wrench, or you can rely on experience if you think you know what you're doing.
Go.
All right, we're going to put the right hand link in first. Okay, this has a washer and a lock washer, and there's a captive bolt in the other side. So we get this guy torqued down, and you can see that even though it's torqued down, it's still, the bearing still has action. Then we'll take the other one. I'm going to make sure that you get the things pointing in. Take the other one, slip it in there. Bolt and the nut and the washer. Washer and the nut. And torque this down. Alright, so now we're going to connect the lower links. To do that, we need to drop the swing arm back down to where it's happy. Put the bolt in there. Got one. There's the other one. Alright. And we'll put the washer on. And the nut. And we'll torque this down as well. Okay. I'm going to put the brake back on. And so in order to do that, remember we have two clips and this little metal thing. So pop the metal thing up. The brake's just going to sit right there. And then the hose goes in those little clips and they just snap. There's two of those. And now notice the chain is under this roller and it's above the roller. It's above the bottom roller. So we're in good shape to reinstall the rear wheel, and we've already covered that.